A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Random House Audio presents Star Wars, Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader by James Luceno. Read for you by Jonathan Davis. Part 1. The Outer Rim Sieges. Murkana. Final hours of the Clone Wars. Dropping into swirling clouds, conjured by Murkana's weather stations, Roan Shrine was reminded of meditation sessions his former master had guided him through. No matter how fixed Shrine had been on touching the Force, his mind's eye had offered little more than an eddying whiteness. Years later, when he had become more adept at silencing thought and immersing himself in the light, visual fragments would emerge from that colorless void, pieces to a puzzle that would gradually assemble themselves and resolve, not in any conscious way, though frequently assuring him that his actions in the world were in accord with the will of the Force. Frequently, but not always. When he veered from the course on which the Force had set him, the familiar white would once again be stirred by powerful currents, sometimes shot through with red, as if he were lifting his closed eyes to the glare of a midday sun. Red mottled white was what he saw as he fell deeper into Murkana's atmosphere, scored to reverberating thunder, the rush of the wind, a welter of muffled voices. He was standing closest to the sliding door that normally sealed the troop bay of a Republic gunship, launched moments earlier from the forward hold of the Gallant, a Victory-class Star Destroyer, harried by Vulture and Droid tri-fighters, and awaiting High Command's word to commence its own descent through Murkana's artificial ceiling. Beside and behind Shrine stood a platoon of clone troopers, helmets fitting snugly over their heads, blasters cradled in their arms, utility belts slung with ammo magazines, talking among themselves the way seasoned warriors often did before battle. Acrid odors infiltrated the cramped space, along with the roar of the aft engines, the starboard one stuttering somewhat, the gunship as battered as the troopers and crew it carried into conflict. Even at an altitude of only 400 meters above sea level, the cloud cover remained dense. The fact that Shrine could barely see his hand in front of his face didn't surprise him. This was still the war, after all, and he had grown accustomed these past 3 years to not seeing where he was going. Nat Sem, his former master, used to tell him that the goal of the meditative exercises was to see clear through the swirling whiteness to the other side. That what Shrine saw was only the shadowy expanse separating him from full contact with the Force. Shrine had to learn to ignore the clouds, as it were. When he had learned to do that, to look through them to the radiant expanse beyond, he would be a master. Pessimistic by nature, Shrine's reaction had been, not in this lifetime. Murkana's lathered clouds finally began to thin, until they merely veiled the planet's wrinkled landscape and frothing sea. A sudden burst of brilliant light drew Shrine's attention to the sky. What he took for an exploding gunship might have been a newborn star. And for a moment, the world tipped out of balance, then righted itself just as abruptly. A circle of clarity opened in the clouds, a perforation in the veil, and Shrine gazed on verdant forest so profoundly green he could almost taste it. Valiant combatants scurried through the underbrush, and sleek ships soared through the canopy. In the midst of it all, a lone figure stretched out his hand, tearing aside a curtain black as night. Shrine knew he had stepped out of time into some truth beyond reckoning. A vision of the end of the war, perhaps, or of time itself. Whichever, the effect of it comforted him that he was indeed where he was supposed to be. That despite the depth to which the war had caused him to become fixed on death and destruction, he was still tethered to the Force, and serving it in his own limited way. Then, as if intent on foiling him, the thin clouds quickly conspired to conceal what had been revealed. Closing the portal, an errant current had opened, and Shrine was back where he started, with gusts of superheated air tugging at the sleeves and cowl of his brown robe. "The Koravar have done a good job with their weather machines," a speaker-enhanced voice said into his left ear. "Whipped up one brute of a sky. We used the same tactic on Perrin Minor. Drew the Seps into fabricated clouds and blew them to the back of beyond." Shrine laughed without merriment. "Good to see you can still appreciate the little things, Commander." "What else is there, General?" Shrine couldn't make out the expression on the face behind the tinted T-visor, but he knew that shared face as well as anyone else who fought in the war. Commander of the 32nd Air Combat Wing, the clone officer had somewhere along the line acquired the name Salvo, and the sobriquet fit him like a gauntlet. "Alliance weapons should have us in target lock by now," Salvo said, as the gunship continued to descend. Other assault ships were also punching through the cloud cover, only to be greeted by flocks of incoming missiles. Struck by direct hits, 2, 4, then 5 craft were blown apart, flaming fuselages and mangled troopers plummeting into the churning scarlet waves of Murkana Bay. In one of the 50-odd gunships that were racing down the well, 3 other Jedi were going into battle, Master Saris Lorn among them. Stretching out with the Force, Shrine found them, faint echoes confirming that all 3 were still alive. He clamped his right hand on one of the slide door's view slots as the pilots threw their unwieldy charge into a hard bank, narrowly evading a pair of hailfire missiles. Gunners ensconced in the gunship's armature-mounted turrets opened up with blasters as flights of Mank-them interceptors swarmed up to engage the Republic force. The anti-laser aerosols scattered the blaster beams, but dozens of the Separatist craft succumbed to missiles spewed from the gunship's top-mounted mass-drive launchers. "High Command should have granted our request to bombard from orbit," Salvo said. "The idea is to take the city, Commander, not vaporize it," Shrine said loudly. Murkana had already been granted weeks to surrender, but the Republic ultimatum had expired. "Palpatine's policy for winning the hearts and minds of Separatist populations might not make good military sense, but it makes good political sense." Salvo stared at him from behind his visor. "We're not interested in politics." Shrine laughed shortly. "Neither were the Jedi." "Why fight if you weren't bred for it?" "To serve what remains of the Republic." Shrine's brief green vision of the war's end returned, and he adopted a rueful grin. "Dooku's dead. Grievous is being hunted down. If it means anything, I suspect it'll be over soon." "The war, or our standing shoulder to shoulder?" "The war, Commander." "What becomes of the Jedi, then?" "We'll do what we have always done. Follow the Force." "And the Grand Army?" Shrine regarded him. "Help us preserve the peace." Murkana City was visible now, climbing into steep hills that rose from a long crescent of shoreline, the sheen of overlapping particle shields dulled by the gray underbelly of the clouds. Shrine caught a fleeting glimpse of the Argente Tower before the gunship dropped to the crests of the frothing waves and altered course, pointing its blunt nose toward the stacked skyline and slaloming through warheads fired from weapons emplacements that lined the shore. In a class with Mygeeto, Maunalinst, and Nymoidia, Murkana was not a conquered planet, but a host world, home to former Senator and Separatist Council member Pascal Argente, and headquarters of the Corporate Alliance. Murkana's deal-makers and litigators, tended to by armies of household droids and private security guards, had fashioned a hedonistic domain of towering office buildings, luxurious apartment complexes, exclusive med centers, and swank shopping malls, casinos, and nightclubs. Arranged like the spokes of a wheel, 4 10-kilometer-long bridges linked the city to an enormous offshore landing platform. Hexagonal in shape and supported on thick columns anchored in the seabed, the platform was the prize the Republic needed to secure before a full assault could be mounted. For that to happen, the Grand Army needed to penetrate the defensive umbrellas and take out the generators that sustained them. But with nearly all rooftop and repulsor lift landing platforms shielded, Murkana's arc of black sand beach was the only place where the gunships could insert their payloads of clone troopers and Jedi. Shrine was gazing at the landing platform when he felt someone begin.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?